So I'm here today to introduce to you somebody in our community that's extremely important to our children. And his name is Scott Howat. He is the Chief Communications Officer for Orange County Public Schools. And he is joined with the CFO of Orange County Public Schools as well. And they're here to talk about something very important today. So I'll go ahead and let them begin.
Well, thank you, Candace. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Scott Howat. I am the Chief Communications Officer for Orange County Public Schools. I also serve as the president of the Foundation for Orange County Public Schools. So I serve in that dual role capacity. It's great to be here today. I want to thank you all Rotarians for the support of our schools and our school children. I know that you all directly support several schools in our community. We appreciate that. Certainly our students, and especially in our Title I schools, need that support. So thank you. Doreen Concolino is here. She is our Chief Financial Officer. So when we get to the questions portion, she's going to take all the hard ones. You just give me the softball questions, but she'll take the hard ones. No, we'll get through this together. But thank you for having us here today. The presentation that I have will go through basically an overview of Orange County Public Schools, kind of where we are, where we were pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, take you through, kind of introduce you to that. And then there is an initiative that the school board has approved to go forward on the ballot in August. It's to continue the 1 mil ad valorem millage that was approved in 2010 and was subsequently approved by the voters in 14 and 18. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So start with the presentation today. Our core business for Orange County Public Schools is teaching and learning. And so today, talk to you a little bit about our vision. The school board renovated their vision. We call it a renovation. They didn't really adopt one, but they adjusted it back in 2020, just before the pandemic, to ensure every student has a promising and successful future. That's the vision. The mission is why we're here, because it really is the community and our families that create those enriching and diverse pathways for our students and their future. And so it's through the community support that we know, community groups, folks that are helping our children, volunteers that come together to help our 208,000 students. Employees. So our organization, our Orange County Public Schools employs almost 25,000 employees, 24,500 employees. We're the third largest employer in Orange County, behind Disney, and anyone guess the other one? Universal Orlando. So they're at 25,000, just above us, and we're the third. So teachers, we have 14,300 teachers. They make up about 58% of our total employees throughout the district. We are the 9th largest school district in the country, and we're the 4th largest in Florida. The 3 other districts that are larger than us, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Hillsborough, they are actually the 3rd, 5th, and 8th largest, respectively. So those 3 are the ones that are significantly, well, in Miami-Dade's case, significantly larger than us. The others, Hillsborough, were pretty close. That's the Tampa area. Our student enrollment, just to give you a little background on where we are, students, back in 2010, we had just under 180,000 students. And of course, large districts experience a lot of growth. You can see we're at 206,000. As of October of last year, this past year, we were at 206,000. We've actually gained 2,000 additional students since October of last year. We're thinking kind of the post-pandemic students are now coming back. You can see where we lost a number of students because of the pandemic, and now that enrollment is roaring back. So significant increase from 2014 to just before the pandemic, and then a dip, and then we're seeing that increase again in enrollment. Number of schools, we have 205 schools. We have 128 elementary schools, our K-8s, our middle, 39, 22 high schools. We added 2 new high schools this year. For the first time, they'll graduate seniors. So significant growth in that area. Our other is our alternative schools and exceptional student education centers. They make up about 7. So we have 205. We'll add 3 new high schools or 3 new schools next year. This is the first time we've added 2 new high schools in a single year. So there was 5 new schools total. Our students, let's talk about them. They make up, they come from 208 different countries. They speak 166 different languages and dialects. Very diverse population of students. We have students going, and when we track our free and reduced lunch and looking at our socioeconomic status for our students, going back to 2013, over the last 8 years, we've seen an increase in the number of free and reduced lunch students to about 10%, 9.5% increase to 75% of them are considered living in poverty or getting free and reduced lunch. So speaking of lunches, our food service, we actually distribute 213,000 meals per day in Orange County schools. And think about the volume of that throughout our 205 schools. But last year during the pandemic, even more meals were distributed because of the pandemic. 47 million meals were distributed throughout the year. We were giving out meals at different locations throughout the county distribution sites, multiple meals at a time, long weekends. We were giving meals for the week. So our food service and transportation, because we weren't driving students, we're working on distributing meals. And so that's a significant increase, and during that time, students weren't being charged for meals, so they were getting breakfast and lunch and afternoon snacks for free, everyone, during the pandemic, as a result of some of the federal funds that came down in regards to lunches and meals. So that will end soon, though. That will end in the next 6 months. Transportation, we have 619 buses on the road every day, about 13.7 million miles per year. We have more buses on the road than Dallas public transportation, than Atlanta public transportation, than Lynx public transportation. So we transport pre-pandemic, about 70,000 students, at this time, about 53,000 students per day. Every bus that's out there on the road takes 42 cars off of the road, so when you're stopped behind that bus waiting for children to get on or off, just think, there could be 42 additional cars on the road for every bus in the morning and in the afternoon. So that's some of the national bus transportation data. So, and since Doreen's here, we have this slide. So we have an award-winning finance department, and they just do an amazing job of keeping track of the money and certainly talking about the additional funds that the taxpayers of Orange County trust with us in addition to our state revenue. But they've won all sorts of awards in every year for their accounting. And our ratings, as far as Moody's and Fitch, are strong, very strong, and have remained strong even throughout the recession and then throughout the pandemic. Give you a little background on our operation. So we have the lowest administrative cost of all the large districts. So there's 7 large urban districts in Florida. I talked about Miami-Dade, Broward, Hillsborough, but Pinellas, Palm Beach, of course, Orange and Duval County. We have the lowest admin costs amongst all of them. So very lean on the administrative side. In fact, statewide, we're 9th lowest statewide of the 67 school districts. So Orange County And we've worked very hard to make sure that we're pushing more money into the classroom, back to the schools, and not at the administrative level. So that's been a focus, and that's continued. I think we've been in the top 10 lowest school districts consistently over the last 12 years. A little delay there. So our graduation rate, I want to go back to 2000. So graduation rate prior to 2000 was less than 50%. So less than 50% of our students in a cohort were graduating from high school. Today in our traditional high schools, our 20 high schools, because 2 of them haven't had a graduating class yet, but we were at 97.9% graduation rate. And amongst all of our high schools, which would include charter, alternative, it's over 90%. So quite an increase over the last 21 years that we've seen in our graduation rates. And this began with our superintendent, with Mr. Blockerns, continued with Dr. Jenkins. That focus on our ultimate KPI is how many students we're graduating and getting into college and career programs. I'm gonna play a video real quick, and David and I talked about this earlier. This is Isabella. She actually goes to Boone. We do a great grad series, so we have a graduate from each one of our high schools that we feature. Not necessarily the valedictorian or salutatorian, but a student that just has a great story. And Isabella, I was gonna share the story with you all today. She does have a great story, great background to tell.
Hi, I'm Isabella Rodriguez, and I plan to major in biology of global health. The thing that drew me to dual enrollment was I always want to feel prepared. Being a doctor is a very long career, and I want to make sure that I like what I'm doing. So I thought that the best way to do that was by trying something similar by being a medical assistant. I love to serve other people, and I think through the medical field and through being a pediatrician, which is what I want to do, really is the best way to kind of do that. So I've been an AP student since I was a freshman in high school, and I've gained a lot through my AP classes, but I think my motivation to kind of join a trade was because I kind of wanted something a little bit more practical. With a trade, you can pick something that you're actually interested and kind of delve a little deeper into that. I think overall with Boone, the thing I appreciate the most is probably the academic opportunities it has offered me. I would like to give a shout out to 2 of the teachers that I think have had the biggest impact on me. That would be Miss Turley. I was online for most of the time, or for the whole time I was in her class, but she always made me feel very welcomed, and she always pushed me to do my best. And then the other teacher that I would give the biggest shout out to, because I think she's formed my entire experience at Boone, despite only having her for just this year, would be Miss Hutzel, because she actually cares about her students and about their lives. I was in 8th grade when the hurricane happened. It was a defining moment in my life. I spent 7 to 8 months without any power, 2 days without water. Everything, you could have everything, and after the hurricane you had nothing. You're used to having power, you're used to having light, and I think it kind of makes me the person I am today, because I'm thankful for literally everything I have around me. So even though it was a very bad time in life, it was a great time in life as well, because it brought me closer to my family, and it allowed me to be more thankful for the little things in life, such as light.
County Public Schools is still an A school district, A rated by the state. One of 24 school districts in the state of Florida out of the 67 that's A rated. We have our national accreditation, just received a renewal of that accreditation in 2021. The initial district-wide accreditation was done in 2016. We're only one of 5 school districts in the country that have done a national accreditation for the entire district. Most of them do school by school. And so we wanted to take on that task. And so Cognia is the accreditation firm that came in and scored us. And so very proud of that and the work that went in to get that accreditation. Our arts and athletics. One of the things that the 1 mil did focus on was arts for our students and access, making sure that we have equity within our arts programs, that everyone has the ability to access it. Because of the 1 mil and back during the recession and the loss of revenue, we were able to actually fund a arts program in every single one of our schools and continue to do that. So that's been very important. In fact, some of the, and I was talking to the arts advocacy group about some of the things that this has been able to do. So among the state's 5 largest school districts, we have the highest overall percentage of students enrolled in the arts. And that also includes the highest percentage of Hispanic, Black, White, and Asian students. So not just your total population, but each one of the demographics have the highest percent of enrolled students in those programs. We have the highest percentage of dance, theater, and music students, and the second highest percentage of visual arts students behind Miami-Dade. They have their visual arts, they just beat us on the percent side. But we're working to pass them next time. We also have the highest percent of students who are economically disadvantaged and English language learners who participate in the arts. So very proud of the access. And here's some of the things. We actually had our top talent program, which we broadcast last Friday. We took submissions of talent from all over the district, both visual and performing arts, and we had a show that was actually filmed at the Dr. Phillips Center and was broadcast 2 weeks later. It was last Friday, where all of the top talent around Orange County performed. Everything from, we had a cappella singers to a yo-yo, to a young man who his craft and art was a yo-yo performance. And so he had a great story as well. So we love to showcase that, and the arts is a big part of what we do. On the athletic side, every single one of our middle schools has an athletic program, which is not true of other school districts around the state. A lot of them eliminated their middle school athletic program. Some of you may recall, as I do, when junior high had all athletic program, football and baseball and basketball. A lot of those went by the wayside when they went to the middle school model, but we've been able to preserve those because of the extra funding that we've received from the voters here in Orange County. So not just athletics, but not just arts, but athletics as well. Our JV and freshman programs are strong in most of our high schools, and every single one of our high schools offers every sport that's sanctioned by the FHSAA, which that's not true of other school districts as well. So we've had everything from, water polo to basketball to bowling, anything that's sanctioned by the FHSAA. Best communities for music education, 6 years in a row we've won this distinction. So we're very proud of that. Scott Evans, who's over our arts program, works very hard at making sure that that arts is infused and that our students are infused in every part of this community because it's so important to our community. Give you a little background on our budget. Our budget is made up of 51% state revenue. That would be sales tax, dock stamps, that portion of it. Local revenue includes our required local effort. That is the tax that's put onto local properties. Of course, it's sent up to Tallahassee and it's equalized and sent back down to us. This local revenue does include the 1 mil ad valorem, which makes up about 9% of our total budget here in Orange County now, which has grown over the years. The special millage that I've been referring to and talking to was first approved in 2010 by 54% of the voters. It was continued in 2014. We put it back on the ballot in 2014, 76% approval, and in 2018 it received 84% approval. And right now the to put that back on the ballot in the August primary. It's polling at about 67% approval, 25% against, and undecided in the middle. So about the same as it was polling back in 2018. The 1 mil that we talk about in talking about athletics and sports and teachers and everything that we've done, this is how much money it generates in our budget, or generated last year. It's $161 million countywide that we collect, and it 85 million, almost 86 million goes directly to retaining teachers, making sure that during the recession, when we were losing dollars overnight, and I'll show you a chart in a minute, overnight we lost about $1,000 per student. And when that happened, all of our elective courses became basically on the table for possible cutting. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to ensure that those programs that weren't required by state mandate were protected. And so 86 million goes to that. Arts, when it comes to music teachers, drama teachers, dance teachers, about 54 million. That funds all the schools having those programs. Athletics, making sure that we have coaches and athletic trainers, about 8 million, 7.7 million. And then our student activities, field trips is usually more than 200,000, but field trips didn't happen during the pandemic. So all the field trips were from behind a computer. So they didn't cost us a whole lot. We were able to reinvest that in some of the other things and within the budget during that time. And then charter schools, they receive a proportionate share and have since 2010. It's actually required by law now that they receive a proportionate share based on enrollment, but we've been doing it and providing them their proportionate share since 2010. They are property owners, taxpayers, their children are public school students. They just go to non-district run schools. And so they get their proportionate share of the money. Here's the budgeting effects. When you look at the budgeted funding per student, back in July of 2010, we were at about $6,500 per student. As I said, during the recession, that dropped $1,000. We were at about $7,500 per student, where that CPI line starts. That's about where we were prior to the recession. Between 07, 08, and 08, 09, we dropped $1,000 per student. And during that time, you can see where the CPI would have been had we stayed at that funding level, and where that would have, where that projection would have gone. In the meantime, in 2011, we received the 1 mil special ad valorem millage from the voters, and you can see what it did to our funding. Literally buoyed it up to above where we were, and continued to climb and grow in the amount, to where when you look compared to the CPI line where it would have been, it covers about half of the total deficit there. We have seen additional state revenue come in per student. In fact, we're back above where we were pre-recession in 2008. But with, we all talk about inflation nowadays, and it's only going to get worse, but that based on the CPI, it's kind of where we are. So you look at our millage rates over that time period from FY10 to the estimated in 23. The legislature continued to roll us back on our millage rates, about 1.88 mils over the course of 12 years, going on 13 years now. And so unlike local government, the school board they don't set their millage rate, their required local effort. That's set by the legislature. In 2016, the legislature made it a conscious effort to keep taxes lower by anytime there was more value added to the rolls, the rollback was to whatever that value was the prior year. So you continue to see this rollback in the millage over time. And had they just left it at 5.4 mils, we would have been at the CPI line by now. based on what we've seen in the calculations and knowing what the value of that is. So in essence, have asked the local voter, the local property owner, to pick up what the legislature reduced over that time. Here's the ballot language. We made a tweak in the ballot language. The board members are very concerned about retention of teachers. We talked about retaining them, paying for their positions, but really, when the legislature invested in beginning teachers at 47.5 and compressed their salaries upward, it took about 12 years experience away from those teachers that were already working for us for 12 years. So they were making slightly over 47,500. And so you saw a lot of teachers looking for other opportunities, frustrated because of that compression that took place. So the board said, and had gone through a lot of back and forth with the union over the last year and trying to negotiate salaries in the overall salary package, but how can we address that the compensation of our more experienced teachers to keep them from leaving and going into other professions, to keep them here. Same thing with our support staff, bus drivers, food service workers. That's become problematic as well. The $15 per hour requirement that was constitutional now has become a legal requirement for us by October of 2022, this year. So we're going to have to compress all of our lower paid employees up to $15 an hour and still take care of our experienced and skilled non-instructional employees. And so the board is concerned, obviously, with continuing to fund what they have now, but as it grows, to be able to apply some of those dollars to compensate in order to make up those gaps. We're never going to be able to fully compete with the private sector when it comes to salaries and other things. They're well above where we are, but we have to get closer. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to bleed out our employees. We're going to lose our bus drivers to Lynx and Mears and Disney and not be able to maintain that. So that was one of the things. The other thing that we that's different in this is we had to add the part about charter schools under the law. We were legally required to share, and so that had to be in the ballot language as well. So that wasn't an issue. We kept all the preserving academic programs, arts, athletics, and student activities in there. So that is the ballot language. And you can see, this is what, if the ballot, if it passes, this is what it would be mean for us in revenue with the 1 mil. So in summary, August 23rd, primary ballot, the additional 1 mil, it's projected to generate about $800 million over 4 years. So when you look at the breakdown, last year was 160, it's going to continue to increase and it'll be over 200 million. Our goal is to not compensate using salary, knowing that this is a 4-year cycle and could go away, but to use it to compensate over that short term, or have some way to be able to compensate so you're not making that long-term commitment with short-term money. The cost of the homeowner, and we checked this with, and Doreen's here, she can vouch for it. We checked with the property appraisers. $229,000 is the median value home. That's the appraised value. That's not what you could sell it for if you were in the market, but that's what the appraised is, with the Save Our Homes and the portability and the value. So it costs the average homeowner about $17 per month for the 1 mil once you back out the homestead exemption of $25,000. So right now, homeowners are paying the $17 per month. The language is just asking, do you want to continue to pay the $17 in order to support Orange County Public Schools? The 1 mil, again, is for essential operating expenses. It doesn't have anything to do with capital or building schools. This is just simply to compensate teachers and support staff, preserve academic programs, and protect the arts and athletics and student activities. And deadline to register is July 25th. Early vote by mail is July 20th. And early voting is 8th through the 21st. And we know, based on the election 2 years ago, most of those votes are going to be cast before we even get to the primary election day. So we want to make sure we're getting the word out, let people know this is always the last item on the ballot. So like I like to say, hopefully we're first in your heart, but we're last on the ballot. So just look for that. So and share that out. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
David, Scott?
Thank you for that presentation. We should all be very proud of our schools in this district. So thank you for that hard work. Statement, the arts and even athletics should never be an option. That should be a part of the curriculum, not an optional part.
Totally agree.
Question for you is, what is the stance of the school board and the school district on the seeping in of critical race theory into curriculum?
Sure. So there's no critical race theory in our standards, in our curriculum. That's not part of our new best standards, which we're adopting for this year, and that is going into critical race theory is not included in that at all. Critical race theory is maybe in other school districts, other states, has not been part of it. I mean, that's been more of a national issue trend. We don't teach critical race theory. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here today and for the excellent presentation. I, for one, would support the 1 mil tax. I have a question. Immigration is always one of the big topics in the news all the time. What impact is undocumented immigration affecting Orlando Public Schools?
So that's a good question. We do have a migrant education department that helps to provide resources for families. We can't ask somebody their country of origin or track that, but we certainly have resources for those that come that are asking for that. So it's part of that the group that helps serve our Title I folks, homeless education, migrant education. We work with. In fact, I think they're having a meeting with the Hope Community Center, dealing with some of our migrant farm workers that are, and families and the students that attend our schools, because they come into our schools. I don't think they're having, it's certainly an impact as far as what we're having on them and their ability to be able to go on and go on to college and get scholarships and things like that. I think, we are putting the resources within those areas to help support them.
Thank you for the presentation and giving us a better perspective of what's happening in the county. I was actually part of Orange County growing up as well, so it's cool to do full circle here.
Alumni,
yeah,
love it, yes.
So the statistic of the graduation rate is quite impressive. 50%, close to 50% 20 years ago is a bit alarming as well. I don't know what half these people were doing, but what kind of factors contribute to such a tremendous increase in percentage? And kind of where I'm leading to is it the curriculum, or is it the students, or what is the factors there?
I think that in back in 2000, if you recall, accountability came into play, where students were tested, and based on their test results, it determined whether they were going to graduate or not, whether they were going to progress from 3rd grade to 4th grade. That was the beginning of the FCAT, for example. Prior to that, we had the HSCT, which was the high school competency test. Those things were factors in putting more focus on ensuring that all students were addressed throughout, and that you didn't have these groups of students that were falling through the cracks, and you were basically teaching to the middle or to your higher end students. So it really did change our focus, not just in Orange County, but statewide in how we go about educating our children. I joked the other day, I was a teacher for 11 years, and I taught in 2000, and my colleague said, "So you're the reason why the graduation rate was under 50%. I said, "Thanks a lot." I taught American government too, so that's a required course to graduate. So it might have been, I might have told my students once or twice, "You better pass this, you're not graduating." But I think being able to track cohorts of students and getting them through and giving them individual plans and education on getting through, and also providing more courses that students are interested in. I think back in the 90s and early 2000s, it was all about your AP courses and those types of things, or your general courses, there weren't as many offerings in areas where you can do career and technical education, or you can get into things that are of interest to students, that they really can motivate them and get them inspired to do that. So a lot of that and remedial education became a big part of that. Students that fell through the cracks or fell behind, they dropped out. 16 years old, they were out working. And they went off the rolls and we didn't track them. So it was really, that part of it as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thank you for all the wealth of information regarding Orange County Public Schools. My question is, the average home is not worth $228,000 in this county anymore. Even appraised values for lots are not even near that. So how do we convince homeowners when their home is worth $500,000 and up? How do you convince that market when a lot of those residents send their kids to private schools? And how do you convince them that they are going to pay a proportionately higher amount than $17 a month? How are you going to convince them? How can we help to spread the information and convince them that it behooves them to have high quality public schools for the kids, even if they're not their particular kids that are going there?
Good question. So I'll tackle that in two parts. One is the $229,000 value is the appraised value. That's the value that you would see on the property appraiser's site, the average value. It's not what you would see on Zillow as far as your estimate of what you could sell your house for. Those are two totally different things. If you're an Orange County resident and you've been in your house for a long time, you have the benefit of Save Our Homes, or anywhere in Florida, which suppresses the value and you pay less taxes because of that. And if you sell your house and move, you can port that tax savings over to your new home. So really the people that are getting the full impact of a tax like this would be somebody who is moving in from out of state and buying a new house or a new property. Commercial property certainly is impacted differently because it's not residential. Commercial's capped at 10%. So there might be a larger run-up or a value, and commercial property would pay more. So I want to address it from that, because Doreen verified with the property appraiser's office, that is the medium value. So that's what the taxable value is. That you would see on your trim notice versus what you would sell your house for on the market. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think, getting out the word and making sure that individuals understand that this is about supporting a system of education in our community. Our community is stronger if our schools and our education programs are stronger. If those become less funded or there's less resources available, it hurts the entire community, whether you have a student in school or not, whether you, if you're a property owner, a homeowner, the value of your home is based on the school. I mean, that's the first thing people ask. How are the schools in your area? We want to make sure that we're continuing to have that type of a level of education. And I think getting that word out and making sure that they understand that is going to be important. They meaning our community, not just those that have children in school, but those that are investing in a system. That supports all of us. So in the end. Yes.
Follow up.
Yes.
I've been here since I got out of graduate school, before Disney, 3 years. Tell me, I've seen the last few years an influx of Hispanics, Puerto Rico, South America, whatever, and then Northerners, because we don't have a sales tax, moved here. What is your makeup of Hispanic, African American, Anglos in the school system now? Because it's drastically changed over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, we have extremely diverse student population. We're about 43% Hispanic. We have 13% are English language learners. So a small number that are native speakers, whether that's Spanish, Haitian Creole, Portuguese. Those are our three largest language areas that we focus even messaging on, for example. Our breakdown is different because we're about roughly 60% white, but that could be white, Hispanic, or non-Hispanic. When you look at the demographics, we're about 26% Black and 27% white Caucasian. And so, and certainly we've been diverse for years. Our diversity, we believe, makes us stronger and puts us in a position where we're teaching every culture, every language, and we're exposing our community. We're making our community stronger because of that. And so it's a big part of what we do. And certainly whenever we have individuals that move into the area from up north, for example, does it put pressure on our schools? It certainly does, and our enrollment numbers and so forth. But in the case where we continue to build homes, we continue to have low tax, we're a low tax state, individuals are going to come, and we want to make sure that we have the resources to be able to serve them, because there's not many people that were originally from here. So I graduated from Orange County Schools, but I wasn't born here, so I'm not a native Floridian. So certainly we deal with the influx all the time. So, yes.
Thank you. Great presentation. That 98% number is really amazing. That 49% number is very alarming, but let me understand how you count those. Do you count a group of 1,000 students that start their first day of high school in 9th grade and then track that all the way through graduation, or how do the numbers work?
We do actually. The Florida Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Education requires for their graduation rates that you count cohorts. So if students drop out of the cohort, they're still tracked as a non-graduate with the years that they go through. So it's so that we make sure that we keep our cohorts together and that we catch them up, so that way they graduate together. Because if they don't, say you had 20% of your students in one cohort that started in 9th grade that fell behind and ended up in 9th grade twice, they're still going to count against that group that continues to move through until 12th grade. And so back in 2000, they didn't track them that way, but they didn't track them by cohorts. It was just however many graduated at the end versus those that had started. And it was at 50, it was below 50%. But now we have to track them by cohort at each grade level. So it is more rigorous. The principals are on top of students to make sure they stay up with their GPA and their number of credits, because that will drive whether they graduate. And testing, you have to actually pass your ELA test in 10th grade and also Algebra 1 in order to graduate. So that's also a requirement. Yes, sir.
Great presentation. I'm one of your vendors. I do a lot of the construction for you guys. And,
thank you. We need that.
So from my point of view, you guys do an excellent job. I just wanted to say that. But one of the things I see, because I'm in construction, is a lot of kids, when they graduate from high school, they don't go to college. There's a good percentage of them. What are you doing to help them find careers? And I know that you're partnered with Valencia. I don't know if you could talk about that a little bit with their accelerated training program. And I know that you have training programs at OCPS, but if you could talk about that a little bit.
We do. So we offer a lot of dual enrollment opportunities. We do have a partnership with Valencia. We have our own Orange Technical College, which is our own training ground. We don't issue degrees, but certificates and certifications, so that students can go on and become everything from a nurse to a designer, a graphic designer, so forth. We have internship programs and all sorts of things. There are non-traditional routes for students to move through their post-secondary education. I know that our former Orange Technical College director, Mike Armbruster, used to call it steak and lobster. So you could do steak, which was college, or you could do lobster, which was tech, or you could do both. And so if you went through both, you could get your you could get a degree, but you could also get certifications along the way that help you to be employed beyond high school. So we work very hard to have those programs lined up and aligned, and we have to have a certain number of completers and graduates in order to meet the standards that the state scores us on for post-secondary. So yeah, all of those help. Yes, sir.
Follow up on the first question that Ken asked a little earlier. It came up in the news that some of the study books have been banned by the state. Did that happen? And if so, how are you coping with it?
So we actually received a list of approved materials for mathematics a year ago that our team, when we have a team of teachers, community members that review all the instructional materials for math, that was an entire process that went through the fall and the winter. And then we took our math adoption forward in April and approved 9 books that were available for math. I think it was more than that, but 9 of them were called out as recalled by the Department of Education. And so we went through the process of asking them, what are the other alternatives? So one grade level had 1 book that we could possibly select from all the vendors on the book side. So I think the Department of Education revisited that and then allowed for the vendors to make some adjustments in their questions. And I don't know the specifics and they wouldn't give us a reason why they pulled the books, but there was some content in there that was objectionable, that they probably felt was critical race theory or CRT related. And these are books that are, national publishers that they're adopting. So they revisited them. And from our standpoint, we're kind of like, just tell us what books we can use that are aligned with the standards and we'll adopt them. And so once they took those back, we had to go through the process of readopting and whatever the Department of Education, and they adopt the standards, and they also adopt the initial books that we have to review and can approve. And so it's really out of the local school district's hands, other than we have maybe 40 books to choose from and we can narrow them to 9 or 10. But those books have already been approved.
Thank you so much for your time. Great presentation, and really appreciate the back and forth dialogue. 2 questions, not related. I'm curious as to where the district stands currently with teacher vacancies. You hear so much about, teachers mentioned within the Great Resignation that seems to be a talking point. And I have to think, related to that issue in the teaching profession, and particularly here, is how the average salaries compare to elsewhere around the country. I know for a fact my daughter's in Maryland. She's under a program in grad school, and she's in her 2nd year there, and she's got a salary that's significantly above what you had mentioned before. And she'd be interested in coming back to Florida and what have you, but that seems to be an impediment, and I'm sure that's a headwind that you talk about often. And then, not related to that, big fan of Dr. Jenkins and Ron Blocker before then, and so I know there's a transition upon us. I'm curious as to how that's coming along and what we can expect going forward with that.
Wow. All right. We keeping track of these questions? Because let me start with that one first. I can work my way back. Yeah, absolutely. Start with that one. So we are in the middle of a search. And so the advertisement's gone out to the invitation to send your applications. So we're gathering those now. That'll be up until May, I think 20th is the deadline for submission. We held a number of community meetings, getting input. We had a stakeholder committee that reviewed surveys and survey data to build out what this community would want in a superintendent moving forward. And so that'll be done, and the hiring will be completed by the end of June. So it'll be the last board meeting in June where the board will pick the new superintendent. And so we'll know something by then, but they'll go through the interview process and taking the resumes down to to a manageable number and then bring them in and interview them. So that we're in the middle of that. Salaries, low tax state, Maryland, high tax state. There's kind of a correlation there between teacher salaries. We certainly have a vacancy issue. We're constantly hiring teachers. We're always hiring. Our vacancies run, and remember, we have 14,000 teachers. Our vacancies run between 100 and 200 vacancies at any given time. I think we try to get those down to 50 to 80. We'd like to have 0, but we know that things happen when you have a population. People move, people change jobs, their spouses, and so we're constantly dealing with that. We have seen an increase in retirements. I mean, because of the pandemic, there's no doubt. Teachers that have been experienced, have been working for us for a long time, decided, look, I can't continue to do this throughout the pandemic. We saw resignation or retirements on that end. So certainly a lot of concerns around that. One of the things we want to do with the 1 mil is to try to use some of that money to help retain teachers so they're not leaving, and we can attract more that can come in that are experienced. Yes?
Scott, can you tell me, or you or Doreen, do you know how much of the Florida lottery still goes to schools?
Is that a trick question?
No.
That's like 0. I mean, Doreen will tell you. So most of the Florida lottery proceeds go towards Bright Future scholarships for students that are graduating. So it goes to our students, but it goes for them to go do their post-secondary work in Florida. I mean, okay. At a Florida accredited institution. Very small amount. School recognition money is school lottery, but when you look at the amount per dollar that's in this, it's nothing. It's 0. And so what we thought we were getting in the 80s when we approved the lottery isn't what we've gotten today. So let's just say that. You can leave that in the present. Who's editing this presentation? We can leave that in. We can leave that in.
Scott, thank you very much.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We are out of time. I want to acknowledge our viewers on Zoom. We know that you have questions. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But Scott, thank you very much, and thank you to your colleagues for what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you, Candace, for getting me here.